Shrivatsa Goswami, Vrindavan, India. Could I ask you maybe to introduce yourself? You'll do a better job than I do.
Yeah, as you said, I am Shrivatsa Goswami. I am a servant of Sri Radharaman Temple in Vrindavan, which is the land of Lord Krishna, the playful God. And we are under the Corona festival. In Vrindavan, we are calling it Corona festival because everything in Vrindavan is a festival, is a celebration. So during the Corona period, we are grounded and we are enjoying the environment of Vrindavan. And I'm happy to talk to you this evening.
So what challenges do you have? What does your life look like, both practically, but even more so spiritually? What spiritual challenges do you face as a consequence of this Corona situation?
Actually, what is interesting, that when the way we live our lives, usually, and if that is disturbed and a change is sort of forced upon us, it becomes a challenge. So the COVID-19 has challenged us in many, many ways, as you said, physically and materially, that we all know. But the spiritual dimension is also interesting. We are habituated, say, the typical life of Vrindavan, where the clock of a household is linked to the temple bells. When the Lord wakes up in the morning, you wake up. When the gods are fed, you have your lunchtime. And when the gods retire, you have your sleeping time. So even that, under the challenge of Corona, those religious habits and religious rituals and religious way of life is challenged.
You can't keep the normal daily temple and consequently household schedule?
No. What has happened that all the temples in Vrindavan has taken a shutdown. Shutdown in the sense that the rituals are continuing, but nobody from across the road can enter the temple premises. Those who are living in the temple to continue the rituals and food offerings and other offerings, they are living there and maintaining all the vigils and aartis and offerings. But even I cannot go to the temple voluntarily because I have to cross a road for a minute to go into the temple.
To Radharaman Temple. You can't go to Radharaman Temple.
No, I cannot go to Radharaman Temple. So that way, we have taken, all Vrindavan temples have taken a self-discipline and restraint, and is completely closed to the outside visitors, and there are no visitors anyway.
Interesting. Do people see that? We have this phenomenon right now in Israel where, with some closures of synagogues, some people are protesting as though it's a sacrilege or an anti-religious act. Do you get similar reactions in India?
There were very few like that. Very few like that. And especially amongst, I'm not trying to isolate any religious community, but the majority Hindu community has fallen in line with the medical and other advices.
What is the profile of the people who did not fall in line?
Those people who did not know what the challenges of coronavirus is medically. They took it, like any another, like ordinary fever or malaria or something which you get seasonally and then you get cured. But not knowing the full consequences and the scenario, so they initially sort of objected. But after a couple of days, everybody cooperating, and it's a huge thing. The cooperation.
This is still spiritual challenges. Do you see physical challenges? You can go, you cannot go. Are there any challenges on the more interior faith level, psychological, psycho-spiritual reactions that you would consider to be challenges for yourself or for your immediate community or broader community?
I think what is happening that in the Corona situation is basically primarily it is a challenge to the medical system. But having known that there is no vaccine, there is no immediate medical known cure for the situation, people are trying, people are getting over it through immunities and things like that. But there is no sure shot for the problem. So then the worry comes. And that worry is hitting deeper. It is not just hitting the body, but it is hitting the mind. It is hitting the emotions. It is hitting relationships. It is hitting your own soul. And that is the big challenge. The challenge to the body we can address with many things. But emotions and spiritual challenges, they are serious.
So tell us how one deals with those. What are the challenges to mind and emotions, and how does one deal with those?
The challenges to the mind and emotions are, like suppose half of your family is traveling and they are stuck there, So, or if you hear somebody's sickness, not just corona sickness, but there are many people whom you want to serve, you want to be taken care of yourself, and people, because of the quarantine and isolation, cannot help each other, and that is in the hour of need. The network is not available to you. So all this adds to the emotional problems in a big way.
So how, as a spiritual counselor, are you able to help people with their very legitimate worries of their inability to support and care for loved ones? What can you tell them? And in that context, what can you tell any viewer of our interview?
What actually happening that it is also will be a response to your later questions, but thanks to the internet, the virtual world, we are empowered with this wonderful media to connect even in that moment of isolation and suffering and deprivation and whatever you call it. And this is coming very handy. And although people saying that there's a lot of time because of the lockdown, but since lockdown, we have no breathing time because you have responsibility to your parish, to your community, to your followers, to your devotees. And their problems are real problems. So as their servant, you have to serve them. And internet is an amazing thing. Although in Vrindavan, somehow the internet is not in a very healthy situation, Corona has hit the internet also.
Oh, it's worse. It's worse than the usual.
Worse than little usual, because I think that there is an overload on the system.
Exactly.
That's why it's not a collapse, but it's overload. So that way, we are fortunate that we are able to connect. We are able to give, advices. We are able to give and listen to them, to their problems, and one-to-one, and also on community basis, through Facebooks, to Twitters.
But what you're telling me sounds so Jewish and so Christian. I don't get the Hindu angle. Where's the Hindu angle in all this?
This is a human angle. This is not the Hindu angle. All these angles have vanished thanks to Corona.
Really? I mean, even your conception of leadership is so identical to the conception of religious leadership of other religious leaders. It's as though we're all in one big boat. One doesn't even hear the religious particularity in all this.
And for that, I'm very, very grateful to COVID-19.
So you really think that COVID-19 has a homogenizing effect on humanity?
Amazing, 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 at least for the time being.
So how do you see this homogenization? I mean, I believe that in your worldview, there's a strong sense of interconnectedness. How do you see that playing out with the COVID-19?
Will you be more precise a little bit on that?
In other words, it seems to be like everyone is interconnected. Someone in a market in China does something.
Yeah.
Brings over an animal, eats it. Viruses goes into the human, spreads all over humanity. Where they're helping each other. We're trying to support each other through the internet. The whole thing seems to be about interconnectedness. Well, how does that interconnectedness play out in terms of the Hindu philosophical background, and what can the Hindu philosophical background help us in understanding the particular, an angle on that situation in reality that we all share?
Actually, in taking in view even the economic and geopolitical situation, including that, the Hindu way of understanding had been sarvam sarvatmakam, that everything is connected to everything. There is nothing in this universe which is not connected.
Universe, not just humanity.
Not just humanity, universe. Sarvam sarvatmakam. And with that Weltang Chong, the Hindu systems work through that, So the political dimensions, the economic dimensions, the religious dimensions, the cultural dimensions, they are all interlinked and very seamlessly interlinked. So that is the kind of academic or philosophical position of the Hindus. But in today's situation, what I see as a value happening today under this global lockdown, that there is a kind of awareness happening that there is one human family. One human family. And this COVID-19 has definitely helped in demolishing lot of walls, lot of boundaries, lot of borders, lot of partitions. And even if they are in the name of God, name of nations, name of languages and economic systems, they are understandable. But even the boundaries on the name of God, they have, in the moment of suffering, they seems to vanish.
Can you illustrate that?
Like, if it is a multi-religious community or locality in some metropolis or some village or say some portion of Vrindavan where the Muslims and the Hindus are living together. So it is the whole commonality of suffering makes them forget their branding as Hindus or Muslims. And that I see as a very positive thing. I'm not saying that the religious branding or the religious identity should vanish in the moment of suffering. That is not my idea. But the branding or the nomenclatures which kept me separate from my Muslim brothers or sisters is not a very wonderful idea. Rather, the suffering is welcome, which demolishes the differences and allows me to share the suffering and the happiness of my Muslim brother and sister. So that way I see this is an interesting positive side of this global catastrophe. And what the academic and the religious enterprise could not make us understand the core idea. And with the core idea is of all the religions, even Hinduism says the same thing, Vasudhaiva Kutambukam, that definitely this whole Mother Earth is one family. One family. But it remained as a slogan. It remained as a slogan. But now today, every country, every continent is trying to understand the problem and share the resources available to them, whether it is medical resources or many other resources or even cultural and spiritual resources. Like what we are doing just now. We are sitting together. You are sitting in Israel, I'm sitting in Vrindavan, and we are pooling our resources together, working under one roof of a sky, under one roof in the home of God. And that realization is very, very direct and very important to me as a Hindu.
Let me ask you about the counter expression of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking about the fact that there's a solidarity of suffering, and that solidarity of suffering makes us realize our deeper interconnectedness, our unity, being one family. We've also witnessed, and I don't know if this is also the case in India, we've also witnessed situations of actually xenophobia. When it broke out, there were strong anti-Chinese feelings. Now in America, there's strong anti-Jewish feelings because of the high degree of contamination of the Jewish community there. They're very tightly knit community, so therefore their social relations are tighter, so therefore the spread is higher. So this has led to a rise in anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism has taken a riot on it, whether because of it or not. So we also see the opposite. Does India experience, for instance, anti-Muslim expressions of this? I mean, someone mentioned to me that there was some situation in Nizamuddin in Delhi where some Muslim group was responsible for spreading a lot of the virus. So it's a beautiful concept that suffering, we are united, but suffering could potentially have the opposite effect of blaming and scapegoating, and that's been that way through the centuries. Do you see such situations, and what mechanisms are there to protect against them?
There was a possibility of flare-up like this because of some high degree of ignorance on the part of some leadership of Islamic faith. Very, very fractional, very fractional. And they underplayed the challenge given by Corona. And faith in Allah is not something which can be compromised at any point. Complete 100% faith and surrender to Allah should be there. But Allah also says that don't defy the challenges like this. That is also His edict. So that one, I will say, a kind of mistake on the part of leadership has done some damage, in the sense, what you said, that there's a kind of a scapegoating and other things, and blaming and things. It started in a little bit, but majority of the religious communities in India, whether Hindus and Muslims and Sikh and Christians, they responded very, very responsibly to this situation and did not blame the whole Muslim community for that. It was a mistake of one very limited small group and behaved very irresponsibly, and they are responsible for half of all Indian corona cases.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they spread after that into 20 states. Otherwise, it was quite localized in Bombay and Delhi and couple of metropolis because of the international traffic. But because of this one mistake and ignorance, born out of ignorance, this happened. But still, even in this, it has not taken a xenophobic proportions, and it has not taken a kind of rooted hatred kind of reaction.
So zooming out, as we were saying, zooming out from that particular incident and even India to the broader dynamic between how suffering can either generate a sense of solidarity or a sense of othering. What is the spiritual principle that allows us to practice solidarity and unity rather than othering? What do we need in our spiritual arsenal that's universal to all religions that will allow them to not fall into the trap of othering?
Definitely, we have to go back to our roots, and the root will give us the strength. The root is that we all are living in one home, and the home is earth. That is for sure. And that is the resource given all spiritual disciplines, all religious traditions. Mother Earth as our home, one home. But it has many houses. The home has many houses, many nations, many religions, etc., etc. But this global borderless experience also give us some kind of positive kind of strength to realize that we are all on common grounds. All our houses and mansions are built on some common ground. So in this situation, what do we do? Draw the resources from our own tradition to serve the needy, our neighbor, our distant neighbor, whoever is in need of our help, in whatever way, monetary way, physical way, mentally, emotionally, in whatever way we can help and serve in this hour of need, and share our resources, not just the economic resources, but the resources of music, resources of poetry, resources of paintings, resources of all these things through social media, and resources of medical expertise, because there are some traditional medical expertise which many people in India are using as a preventive medicine. And the modern medical science, allopathic system may not agree to that. But a huge number of Indians are believing that it has not taken a pandemic proportion in a country of 130 crore people because they are practicing something traditional. So those traditional wisdoms also should be shared and should be clinically tested and verified for the human good. So that kind of serving and sharing our resources. But apart from that, the most important thing, what we as religious persons, religious leaders, religious spiritual leaders, responsible people, praying. That is the biggest resource and tool we have to our availability, that if we can pray. So one of the traditional prayers, which the Hindus, even the child will remember, Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kashchid dukkha bhag bhavet. So this is like a nursery rhyme. But the nursery rhyme is very, very useful. that sarve bhavantu sukhinah, that not only me should be happy, all should be happy. Sarve santu niramaya. Nobody should have a physical ailment, like corona or any other ailment. So we should be against all, we should work together against any kind of ailments. And I should see the welfare of all. Sarve bhadrani. The welfare of all should be in my vision. And there should be no suffering to anyone. So if that is the ground of our prayers, the prayer can take any form. And there are millions and millions of prayers available to us as per our liking, as per our tradition, as per our language, or whatever. We can pray. And that prayer has the biggest strength. It has a physical strength. It's not only just the metaphysical or a spiritual strength, but it has a physical strength, And that's why I admire the political leadership, that we had two together prayers, once with the sound. The whole nation came out to pray through the sounds. And yesterday, everybody silently prayed for the departed souls, for the souls who are suffering, for the medical workers who have put their life at stake, for the policemen, for the food suppliers, the milk suppliers, who are completely threatened for their life, but they are serving millions and millions and millions of people. So yesterday, the whole of India at 9 o'clock in the evening, we were all holding one lamp in our hand without saying anything, just silent prayer. Silent prayer for the removal of the suffering. It seems like a political gimmick, but it is not a political gimmick. It is not a religious gimmick. It is a human solidarity in isolation. We can pray, and if we can pray, then it can bring the social togetherness. In this social, what you call, what is the word for social?
Distancing. Social distancing.
So there is no need for social distancing. We are coming more and more socially together. Social connectivity, togetherness. And that is, again, I will repeat, thanks to the internet. Why should we be disconnected socially? Physical distancing is okay, but social distancing is not welcome. I think we should redo the word physical distancing, not social distancing. Socially, we should come together and more together.
Really what it is not to have prayer distancing. We should have a world in which we pray for each other and we pray together. Suddenly it occurred to me, wow, if all of India can do this, what if the whole world, as part of the corona, took this idea of lighting a lamp and everyone saying a silent prayer, became a global phenomenon for a certain, 1 minute. Boy, that would be powerful.
Yes. And that's why, even when a Hindu sits for the meal, it is such a beautiful prayer. And we can again relive that prayer. We have mimicked that prayer all right through our life. But now it is a time to live our prayers also. And especially as a religious leader. The prayer is Sahana Vavatu. You have heard it millions times. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karvavahi. That means, let us be together. Let us be together. Exist together. For existing, what you need? You need to eat. You too need to nourish your body. So, Sahanau Bhunaktu. Let us eat together. And for getting those food and nourishments, we have to act. Sahaviryam Karvavai. So we should perform all those acts of bravery to do away with the evil. We should act together. Ma vid vishavahi. But do not despise the other. This is not the moment to despise the other, but to be with the other, to work with the other. And that is what will happen. And I was hearing that down under in Australia, maybe someone has found a vaccine which they are very hurriedly clinically testing. So suppose this act in Australia is an act of togetherness. Whether it is happening in a scientific lab, in a genetic lab, doesn't matter. It is not happening in a temple or a mosque or something. But what the Hindu understanding about this is that there is a core formula for a situation like this or for any situation in human life. And the core of the formula is Jnanam param guhyam me yat vigyan samanvitam. That the spiritual wisdom is good enough only when it is synoptically understood through science. And then the scripture asks, what do you mean by science? The answer comes, any knowledge system whose conclusions are universally applicable and empirically verifiable, they are scientific. It's very broad and very acceptable definition of science. I think even Einstein will have not much objection to that. So under that, if now the spiritual leadership, the medical leadership, the political leadership, the economic leadership, if all these leaderships come together, if all these knowledge systems come together, Corona is a very small threat, is a very small challenge. The human life day to day is a bigger challenge. Poverty, hatred, violence, distancing, they are huge challenges, huge challenges. And with this togetherness, we should be related. The Corona, I think, will also remove the boundaries between the materialistic scientific world to the spiritual religious world. That dimension also has to come together for humans' welfare.
So what do you imagine for the world after Corona? With such high expectations, do you really think it'll bring about a change in our world?
Actually, one thing is very interesting, that what will be the life? What will be the life after Corona? That is a very interesting thing, and I was been musing about it, that for sure one thing will happen, that Corona has really attacked the human arrogance.
Has really what, the human arrogance?
Attacked
or
challenged the human arrogance. What is Corona? Is it a divine act or is it a human creation? And the communities are divided. People are saying God is punishing us for our misdeeds. So basically it is a human. Even in that case, it is a human misdeed for which God has to take an action, a corrective action.
Do you think it's punishment?
So I don't think so. I think it is a human folly. The Corona is a product of a human mistake somewhere. No blame game, but it is in the human arena. Because God, all loving, all compassionate, He is not a sadist. He cannot create Corona. He cannot create Corona because He loves His creation. He loves humanity. He loves living beings. And He works for that. He doesn't work for creating Coronas. Corona cannot be created in His laboratories. It is some mistake of our lifestyle that which has made it manifest. So if we, out of arrogance, say, oh, I have not to do anything, it is all divine act, then it's a mistake. But we also have to understand now that if we do not take the path of dharma, dharma means the path of knowledge, systems, and values which sustain happy human life, whatever they are, whether they are scientific, whether they are cultural, whether they are economic or spiritual. So all those dharmas, all those sustaining factors of human welfare, we have to review and go back to them. We have to be more aware of them. And in that life, the human arrogance that human life itself is the life. There is a nature, there is the animal kingdom, there are birds, and there are even bacteria. And I tell you, some medical doctor was telling me that if there are no bacteria in this world, the human race will vanish. It will vanish. Thanks to them that we are living happily and healthily. So we have to also, in our ecosystem, we have to accept, we have to give away some of our arrogance, being the supreme or whatever and whatever, and share our space on earth with all this. And definitely, we are afraid of COVID-19. We are definitely afraid. But look at the paradox. We are relentlessly creating weapons of mass destruction. More developed we are called, more weapons of mass destructions we have. Chemical, nuclear, biological, you name it. We are running, trying to compete with each other to create weapons of mass destruction. And Corona has given this little idea for us to stop and think. Corona is saying, I have impacted not even 100,000 deaths, not even 100,000 deaths. One nuclear bomb will wipe out millions. So why are you afraid? If you are so committed for the weapons of destructions of humanity and nature and everything, then why are you afraid of me? So this paradox is very interesting, and I think it will give a little moment of thinking for those leaders who are going in that. So that is one point. The third point is we will need some basis for that order, ecological order. Corona will make us think. It is a shock treatment to rise us from our slumber and ignorance. But my problem is that human memory is very short. The forces of greed will be in control. As soon as Corona is in control, the power of greed, not the power of need, but the power of greed, will definitely take us over again. And what can we do? Let's pray that it doesn't happen soon.
So what is your spiritual medicine for greed?
Again, as I said, all the religious traditions have this need-based sharing lifestyle. Solitude is not a punishment. If you see, solitude is the last commandment of all the spiritual disciplines across board in the religious world. It's not just the weekly Shabbat, which brings you isolation and confinement and lockdown. It is for the Hindus, for the Muslims, Ramadan, for all the communities. There is a kind of solitude. There is a meditative aloofness, which is the highest point of a spiritual journey. But that is welcome. And this Corona solitude is not welcome for one reason, because this solitude is not by our choice. The spiritual solitude is welcome because we choose it. We invest in it. We work for it. We make efforts to get the spiritual solitude. But this by ignorance and by mistakes, we have fallen into it. So that's why it is a suffering. So that is one thing. But what can happen that in that solitude situation, we can also look within. What we have been seeking outside, depending our happiness on the objective world, maybe the inner happiness can be rekindled. And every religious tradition, including the Hindus, have that resources built in. Now is the time to focus more on them, because a healthy and a completely united human being who is physically healthy and is spiritually healthy only can serve the humanity, only can show the way to the society, only can be a fit leader in any way of life.
So here's what I hear you saying. What I hear you saying is that the reality of this forced retreat from the world, the sense of being deprived from ongoing life, having to go inward, is not just a temporary thing. It's the means of learning the fundamental lessons that will allow the enduring benefits of Corona to stay with us and not get trampled over by the rush of life when Corona is over. So we need that solitude now so we learn our lessons of Corona properly. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Anything else that you wanted to share with us? I know we didn't exactly follow the sequence of the questions I had initially anticipated.
No, the sequence is not important because Corona is very round.
Yeah.
And it's very sticky. It can stick anywhere.
So was there anything further that you wanted to share with us apropos of this broader situation?
No, I was just wondering that a very small story from my tradition that in a situation like Corona, somebody asked God that, have you done this? Is it your wish to give us a time frame like this? He said, no, it is not mine, but I was petitioned. So I granted the petition.
By whom?
So I asked the God, I said, what was the petition? the petition was that human beings always come to me and complain that, oh my Lord, where is the time to remember you? Where is the time to serve you? You have given me a body. I have to sustain my body. I have to eat. I have to bathe. I have to do this. I have to sleep. And I have to earn. I have to raise a family. I have to do all these things. Where is the time? 24 hours are very less. Very less. So then God came back and he said, all right, if people are suffering with lack of time and not able to connect with me, then he gives a lockdown for 21 days, for 1 month, for 2 months, depending on the demand of the people. So he gives this lockdown. And after the lockdown, God thought that everybody has in a kind of perfect Shabbat, or something. So everything peaceful, everybody on their rosaries and remembering and reading the holy books and doing the yoga and everything. But he found it opposite. He said, I gave you all the time. I cut on your travels, your functions, your office from home, groceries delivered at home, no rushing, nothing. He said, but my Lord, I have to prepare for the meal. I have to cook. I have to do the utensils in the kitchen. Now the wife is saying that now it is your turn to take over the kitchen. You have to mop the floor. You have to dust the house. You have to take and play with the kids. So Lord, there is no time for you. So the God said, all right, if you don't have time with me and for me, but at least in Corona, spend some time with yourself in total isolation, and you will find me there.
Mm-hmm. This is the modern Vrindavan Purana.
Right. This is the Purana which is read during the Corona festival.
Yeah, it's the Purana of the Corona festival.
Right.
I'm sure the next thing is we're going to have a musical rendition of it.
Right. Don't worry. There the Facebook is filled with all the music and poetry and everything on Corona.
Like that.
You will be amazed.
Okay. Shrivatsa Goswami, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to sign off with a note of laughter. That's also very beautiful.
Okay. Thank you.